Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I am filming my review and 3 demo look on the Anastasia Subculture palette. I recently just uploaded my Mono Renaissance 3 demo look, so if you guys want to check that out, I'll be sure to leave a card somewhere here on the screen. But in today's video, we're going to be talking all about the Subculture, the famous Subculture palette. But before we get started and you guys leave video requests, I am planning to get the Nirvana palette as well. So I mentioned in my Mono Renaissance video that I will be getting Soft Glam, and a lot of you guys wanted me to do Prism as well. If there's any other Anastasia palettes, I most likely will get them because I kind of want to go through all the Anastasia palettes now and do 3 demo looks on all of them. But these palettes are not cheap, so give me some time. I am going to get the new Nirvana palette, but I'm not going to get it on the day of launch. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there that I am planning to go through all the Anastasia palettes. So in saying that, if you guys are interested in hearing my thoughts and seeing 3 demos on the Subculture palette, then just continue watching. So the Subculture, it was a whole drama, I feel like, on YouTube. For one point in time, Subculture was the only thing that everybody was talking about, and when it launched, I wasn't going to get the Subculture just because I wasn't so impressed with the Modern Renaissance palette, and just hearing so many mixed reviews about the Subculture, I was like, I can kind of pass on it. But when it first launched, I was really loving the shadows in here. So you get 14 shadows, it comes with a brush, and it comes with a mirror on the other side as well. I think in New Zealand it's about $80 to $90, but US dollars I think it's around 40 or 60, somewhere around that mark. But the reason why I decided to buy Subculture is because it was on sale. It was 30% off. I was like, I might as well, you know, I already done Modern Renaissance, I'm gonna do Soft Glam, I might as well just get the whole family. First things first, let's address the fallout, because I feel like that's the thing that most people were kind of like freaking over about. I honestly wasn't sure why people were so like shook. The Mono Renaissance has a lot of fallout as well, and now that I have both palettes and I can compare, I do think Subculture has a bit more fallout than the Mono Renaissance, but they both have a lot of fallout. My vanity table looks pretty much the same, it's covered in eyeshadow, but there is a difference in formula. The mattes in here are just so pigmented that you really don't need to dip your brush in like bam 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 bam. For me, I'm quite heavy-handed with my eyeshadow, so I do like to go into my eyeshadow a lot, but with this I've learned you just need to like dip 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 and you're good. The pigment will be there, like trust me. And I feel like when you do that, you will get less fallout. The Mono Renaissance, the matte shadows are very pigmented as well, but this is just like, the formula is different. Also, I want to just mention the brushes if you guys care about the brushes. I don't know if you guys actually use them, but it's very similar to the Modern Renaissance one. I like the synthetic side. I think this is great for like the lower lash line. For the other side, it's more like a really stiff blending brush, but I think the quality of the brushes that come in these palettes are not that bad. Like, I wouldn't throw it away. I would definitely keep it and use it somehow. I do think this palette is for someone that has a bit more skills with makeup. Definitely not someone that is just starting out with makeup. Like, if you're a beginner and you want to get your first palette, like, I'm not gonna say get Anastasia, because I think you just need to know how to blend. You need to know your shadows a little bit more than the beginner person. I feel like my makeup level is probably like an intermediate, and I feel like this palette is for like an intermediate to advanced, like a Nikki Tutorials level, you know? I personally found it quite hard to work with some shadows, and if I can give you one advice when you're working with this palette is like, just stick with it. Just stay strong, pull through, because in the beginning it looks very messy, very like just bad, but once you clean up, you give yourself a wing, put some lashes on, put your base on, the makeup look looks pretty solid, and I like how everything turned out. With Anastasia, the thing that's so great about their brand is it's very, very unique. I haven't seen a palette like this. I feel like the Jaclyn Hill, the new Vault collection, which hasn't came out yet, I've seen some of these, you know, green, olives in her palette, but this Subculture palette came out last year, so since then I haven't really seen a palette like this, and I feel like Anastasia does a really great job of doing really, really unique shades. This is like an artist palette, you know, someone for a professional, someone very creative. It's not like an everyday. I mean, you could make it to an everyday palette, but I just feel like Anastasia is all about the artistry. This palette is very cohesive. All these shades go together. The way it looks, I feel like it just satisfies my soul. I think it's a good palette, but it is a little bit harder to work with. It's like a palette that I would just grab for certain looks or for a certain shade. I don't know if I'm gonna recommend it to everyone. I feel like this palette is just for a specific kind of group. If you were to use this palette quite often, you probably would hit pan on it pretty quickly, just because I've already made a lot of dents into this palette, and mind you, if I've only used this palette like 3-4 times, I haven't used it a lot, so I've already made dents just because there's so much fallout with this palette. So I don't know how much you're getting your money's worth if you are gonna hit pan on it so quick just because of all the fallout. So all in all, I'm gonna say this palette is good. It's not my favorite, it's not the easiest to work with, but I think the idea behind it, the shades in it, I think it is worth it to me, especially because I got it 30% off. And so yeah, that is my review on the Subculture. Hopefully that was helpful, and if you guys want to see my 3 demo looks on this one palette, then just continue watching. So to get started with the first look, I'll be taking the shade Roxy, and this is going to be my transition shade. I'm just putting this straight into my crease using windshield wiping motions. And then taking the shade Fudge, we're going to put this in the outer corner of our eyes, starting to build up that outer depth. I think Fudge is a repeat shade, I believe. I think it's also in the Modern Renaissance, if I'm not mistaken. So what I like to do with this shade is just place the initial product in that outer corner, and what is ever left on my brush, I will bring it into the inner part of my crease, not dipping back into the eyeshadow. Because like I said in the review, that these eyeshadows are very, very pigmented. You definitely don't need to dip back in. Taking some concealer on the back of my hand, I'm going to start carving out my crease. So what I like to do is just place the concealer in the inner part of my eye, since I am creating a half cut crease, and then I will drag it up to the highest point of my fold. I will look up, and then that's going to create the mark where I need to go past. I do have a full tutorial on how I do my half cut creases. I will link it here just in case you want to get a full in-depth video on that. Another trick that I've been doing is just taking my ring finger, and where the concealer and the shadows meet, I just like to dab over that part so it just kind of blends together. And then I'll be taking the shade Edge, and this is going right on top of that concealer. Since this is a matte shadow and it's going on top of a concealer, it can kind of come off patchy in the beginning, but you just want to keep packing on that pigment to get that, you know, opaque shadow. And then taking the shade All Star, this is going to be the shade that's going to mesh the yellow and the brown together. That way there are no harsh lines. This look I actually had to refilm, and I actually liked how it turned out the first time, because I think the first time I filmed you could see this All Star shadow a lot more. Still using the shade All Star, I'm going to press this up against my waterline just using a really thin definer brush. And then using more of a thicker shader brush, I'm going to use this to smoke out and diffuse that shadow. And of course, taking my Sigma kohl liner, I'm going to use this to line my bottom waterline. I think if you were to use like a yellow kohl liner, I think that would have looked much better. It would really brought out that cut crease. And that is the completed look for look number 1. For lashes, I am wearing the iconic Lite. And for my lip color, it is the NYX Cosmetics Soft Matte Lip Cream in the shade London. For look number 2, I'm going to start off with the shade of Fudge, and this is going to be our transition shade. As usual, I will start putting that straight into my crease using windshield wiping motions. I focus most of the product in the outer corner of my eye first, and then I like to bring it in towards my crease. Then taking the shade Mercury, I'm just going to use this shade to help further blend Fudge. Just because it's such a dark shade, it's definitely not like a transition shade. Just using this to go around the edges to make everything look a little bit more diffused. Next up, I'm going back in with All Star, and this is going into the outer corner of my eye, just really building up that depth in there and using what is ever left on my brush into that inner part of my crease. Moving on to the shade Rowdy, I am doing the same kind of motions that we use with All Star, but using a smaller brush and focusing it in a smaller section. I'm just focusing most of the product on my outer lash line. And then taking the shade Adorn, this is going into the inner part of my lid space, kind of like my cut crease, but we didn't use any concealer. We're kind of just cutting out the crease with this metallic shadow, and Anastasia's metallic shadows are just one of the best. I will go back in with the shade All Star, and I'm just going to use this to diffuse where the metallic and the matte shadows meet. That way there are no harsh lines. You guys see me do this a million times. And still using All Star, once again I am putting this on my lower lash line, exactly the same method as Demo 1. And that is Demo 2 completed. For lashes, I am wearing the Demure Lite from House of Lashes. And for my lip color, I am wearing the shade Third Eye from the Colourpop Matte Luxe Lipstick line. Okay, final look. Let's get started with the shade New Wave. This is going to be our transition shade. So I think for this look was probably the hardest look out of all of them, just because I'm using all mattes here and they were a little bit tough to work with, so just bear with me for this look. Next, we'll be taking the shade Destiny, and this is going all over our lid space. I focused most of the product on my lid, and then I just kind of blended up towards my crease into that transition. You definitely got to go back and forth with the shade and really build it up. And that's the thing that I find with these matte shades like Edge and Destiny and Untamed. These are shades that you have to keep going back to build up that pigment. Using the shade Untamed, we're just gonna pack this on and keep layering on that gradient. So I'm gonna focus this shade more towards my eye, not gonna go past the shade Destiny, which was the previous shade, which is kind of coming lower and lower to the lash line, and we're just really building up that dirty, dark forest green shade. And then taking the shade Access, I'm gonna start layering this on top of Untamed. So you can see here we're just kind of working in layers, really building up that color. This one is mainly just going near my lash line and literally like where my lid space actually is. Going back in with the shade New Wave, this is going all over my lower lash line. I'm really smoking this out so it can match the shade on top. And then taking Access once again, I'm going to press this up against my waterline, making sure we're not really taking over New Wave. So that way there is a little bit of a gradient and we're just kind of doing the opposite effect that we did on our top lid onto our bottom lash line. I then took the Colourpop Creme Gel Liner in the shade Fast Lane and I used this to tightline my bottom waterline. It's literally the same shade as Access, so it matched perfectly. And lastly, taking the shade Electric, which I think is my favorite shade out of the whole palette, I'm going to use this to highlight my inner corners, just so that we have a pop of shimmer in this whole matte eye look. And I just love the shadow so much. Like, I want to do a half cut crease with this as the main shade. I think it's just so stunning, so pretty, and so unique. And that is it. That is the completed look for look number 3. For lashes, I am wearing the Boudoir Lite from House of Lashes. For my lip color, it is the NYX Cosmetics Soft Matte Lip Cream in the shade Abu Dhabi. Okay guys, that is going to wrap up my video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed my review and also the 3 looks that I created with the Subculture. If you guys did enjoy this review and the looks that I created, be sure to give it a thumbs up for me. It would help me out so much if you did. If you guys have Subculture, what do you guys think? Just let me know your thoughts on Subculture. I would love to hear your opinion. And that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!